Ah, good day, friend. Good day indeed. Right, so this is meant to be a sort of, I guess, part two to that rogue leveling guide I did. So if you haven't seen that, maybe go back and study a little bit if you want to. Your choice, but I felt the need to do a part two, and I might do a part three for Grand Dungeon, to be honest, because things do sort of change. Things that I said last time might not be as applicable to floor 7, which is where this is at, and the Grand Dungeon technically. So, yeah, it's a bit odd, right? So, for starters, right? So the gear, like I said before, would mostly defend, or well, mostly heal power for rogues, and then having some defense here and there. Um, this being the third rogue I've ever leveled, well, the third, you know, time I've leveled as a rogue. Normally, I would go a different build, and then respec into rogue at level 70. Uh, with the free respec. So, something that I've noticed that I've tested out is this doesn't really work too well in floor 7, right? And floor 7, if you don't know, is kind of a major power or difficulty spike, I should say. Enemies are really strong. They will kill you really fast. They have a lot of debuffs and stuff like that. And more so than floor 8, although floor 8 does have a few of its own monsters to deal with. Floor 7, it seems like 80% of the enemies in this on this floor are rather difficult. So some changes need to be made. Namely, floor 7 hits so hard that your defenses aren't really going to cut it. Floor 8, there's not too many enemies that will hit you like a truck. And floor 6, same deal. There are a few, but not many. Floor 7 is full of them. So something that I tend to do once I get to Grand Dungeon anyway is to have an offensive and then a defensive set. Now in Grand Dungeon, enemies are much more tanky. They have a lot more defenses, health, but they still do some okay damage. So normally I would like to use a offensive set for Grand Dungeon, and that's why I make one there. But I felt the need to make one here, right? So, and since I'm at floor 7, this is around the time where attack or magic on equipment starts to become more prevalent, right? Now, of course, I guess that kind of starts at floor 6 or so, um, with the attack on gear. But yeah, so I kind of put attack like on each piece, like just where I could, dropping my defense by about 50 points, which usually would kind of hurt, but in this case, not so much. And through all the heal power and attack combos, because like I said before, once you start hitting the late to end game, you're not going to find heal power tied with your defensive stats. Like, I gave an example last time. Oh, the holy water flask, right? Yeah, like you're not going to see that past floor 6, or at least not much of it anyway. The seashell shield is the dungeon keeper drop, so that's why it's like that, because the dungeon keepers kind of came out much later. Uh, so yeah, you're gonna see a lot of attack and heal power, which is great. Give you some options. And I tried to not reduce my defenses too much. I do have a little bit of a negative in the medic defense department, but it should be okay. And I also try not to have a huge negative in my elemental resistances. Now I do have a -9 in the fire resistance, which is pretty bad considering Dungeon 2 is nothing but fiery enemies at this point. A bunch of lizards, right? So, yeah, probably not the best to do that, but I kind of don't really know what else to use there for now. I mean, it's temporary. I'll figure something out, I'm sure. Um, so yeah, going for offensive. So I got about 100 or so more attack, which is a pretty decent bump in damage, combined with the crits, or the damage from crits. It'll really shine there. A side note that I should mention with floor 7. This is kind of where you can start getting some really good crit chance gear. Although most of it is in floor 8. At floor 7, you've got the web belt, a pretty good name, which will give you a lot of crit chance. Although, if you want, if you want a more defensive option to that, because I know when I'm playing like a bruiser rogue, I don't want my defense to go down. You can use, or if you do floor 4, you have a chance of getting something that's called, I believe it's the Thorn Belts. And the Thorn Belts, I don't know if I have another crit character on. Okay, no, this is technically crit. The Thorn Belts, yeah, this right here. Really good belt to have, and you can get that right at floor 7. It is a secret drop from player-made dungeons or challenge dungeons, because if you do a challenge dungeon that is at least 3 floors below you, you will get a secret drop. Each floor has one. All the way up to floor 6, if I'm not mistaken, if you're floor 8, which is kind of breaks the rules, but I digress. So yeah, you can kind of get that from floor 4. Player Made Done is also the coveted Portal Armband, one of the best crit pieces in the game. And you can get that right at floor 7. It reduces your attack by a fair amount, which again, if you're going full dexterity, that will really, really hurt. But it gives some amazing crit power and a decent amount of crit chance, so it's a good thing to have. So try and farm that up when you can. I didn't mean to put it on, and I forgot what I had here. Oh well. I gotta get back to that crit necromancer. It's been a while, but yeah. Also, so something else I never really thought about. Last time I mentioned full dexterity, half strength, half endurance, half strength, or in half dexterity. I never really considered the possibility of just going full strength. And full strength, I guess I haven't really tested it like I have the other ones, but on paper, I guess that wouldn't be too bad. If you can just put some heal power on your gear, having that high base attack would make your non-crit lifesteal skills heal pretty well. You'd be taking a lot of damage, but you might be okay. I'm not too sure yet. I'll have to play around with that on the next character or something. Right, so like I said, I'll attack, tree, I've gone down into ranger, and these 2 skills are the main reason to get ranger. These 2 are really useful for a rogue. You know, the 100 mark will reduce an enemy's defense, and normally rogues don't usually need that because, well, in theory, they have poison and bleed, right, to get around tanks, because these dots, which do a flat amount of damage percentage of an enemy's health, max health, they ignore defenses, so you can stack that on them. But tanks tend to do good damage to a rogue, at least most glass cannon rogues anyway. I mean, I guess bruiser rogues too. It depends. But yeah, having or just trying to rely on your bleeds, while it does work, you do take a bit more damage than I would like anyway. It kind of hurts sometimes, and plus you can't really heal yourself off of a tank. Like if you really need to heal and you're out of Mystic Strikes, which is kind of just a rogue thing. The rogues always burn through their mystical strikes. Hunter's Mark kind of alleviates that because you can just reduce the defense of a tank severely. Like this is a -2 and a -1 put together, so it's a -3. Well, not quite a -3. -3 debuffs were kind of snuck out of the game, because they were so strong. But either way, a tank will have very, very little defense after this, so you can hit them with your life steal skills if you need to heal, and plus just kill them as well. And then Arrow Storm is just really useful to kill very dodgy, very rogue-like enemies. Actually, enemies that have a lot of agility, have a lot of damage, and that dodge you pretty well. Because in case you don't know, this hits 2 times, like in one turn. So enemies and players cannot dodge, cannot evade twice in a row. So if they evade one arrow, they're going to get hit by the second, regardless. So this is pretty much guaranteed damage, regardless of how much evasion an enemy has, which is very useful. I don't know if you can hear that. The neighbor's dog going wild. Please excuse that if you can hear it. So yeah, and also the final passive is just kind of an icing on the cake, reducing an enemy's evasion even more, and giving yourself some evasion. It's kind of nice. That's why I said last time it's a bit more forgiving than the other rogues, because assassin is just mostly just about dealing damage, which is not guaranteed. Monk is all about evading, but the problem with evading is that, like I said, you can't evade twice in a row, so you have to get hit at some point. Although Ox Awareness is very nice because you do get a life steal buff, which means that any damage you deal will heal you, and also you get lucky as well. Lucky is very, very critical, no pun intended, to rogues, because it'll roll their crit chance twice and take the higher result. Same with your evade and deflect chances too. So, and Monk has that. Ranger has that with Arrow Storm. Bard technically has that with Requiem here because it's got 2 turns on there as well. Yeah, Bard is also pretty decent. I mean, it is touted as being one of the strongest paths in the game. But for like a rogue bard purpose, you do have a slight heal. It's not the strongest heal, but it's a 8% based heal. Although it won't do any damage, it will give you lucky. And then they also have their own defense debuff. Not as strong as the ranger, but I guess, well, this one is stronger and has 3 charges. This one can miss because it's an attack. This one is a This one is a non-attack. It's just a purple skill. Purple skills don't do any damage. They just do something, right? And that doesn't. This can't be evaded. It always works. So something to keep in mind. And then the final passive, turning all your debuffs into buffs, meaning that your debuff skills on the bard are going to give you the positive version of those buffs. So if you hit someone with minute, you reduce their attack and you get like an attack buff, things like that. Again, that's kind of the reason why Bard is kind of touted as the strongest, or one of the strongest paths, because of that reason alone. A lot of flexibility there. You could pair it with Grappling Hook to give yourself 5 turns of these 2 buffs, although you kind of get these from your critical shooting and your concentration. So yeah, and rogues don't really have a whole lot of stat debuffs, really. At least in the regular rogue, they don't really have any stat debuffs, so kind of hard to make use of the bard's final passive outside of the bard entry tree. So, but yeah, there's that, and yeah. So ranger is just kind of more. It's a pretty good all rounder. You can kind of get through anything that comes your way with those 2 skills. So yeah, full offense. So let's go in here now. Usually, at this point, at floor 7 and 8, the dungeons are very more refined, or not refined. The enemies within have a very what's the word? I'm not too sure, but all the enemies are very similar. Like you're not gonna find a wide variety of enemy resistances and strengths. Like floor 6, there are enemies that resist air. There are enemies that are weak to air. Some enemies are resist earth. Some enemies are weak to earth. Things like that. In floor 7 and 8, so the enemies are very kind of all the same. So they share the same weaknesses and strengths. So floor 7 is full of the dark elves, the drow. I forgot what they're called in this game. You get a quick look. Okay, Moondrow, right? Yeah, it's a little different than the D&D stuff, but yeah, the Moondrow. They're all weak to fire and air, and mostly neutral to water. Like they won't resist water, but they won't be weak to it. But they resist earth like crazy. So something to keep in mind. And then over here, the fire the opposite is true. They resist fire and air. Well, the lizards do. They're weak to earth and they're weak to water, but they do have a skill that will reduce your earth power. So usually you want to go in there with water. Now, this being a rogue, rogues have a lot of fire and air skills, and both of their lifesteal skills are fire and air. So you're going to have a much easier time going through the Moondrow than you will with the floor 7 Fire Abyss bridge. Because lizards resist those two elements, and you're gonna have a hard time healing yourself. Now, not all enemies resist the air. Well, I guess I can show you. Not all enemies resist the air in this place, because there are a few like forge, like automatons that are weak to earth and resist fire, and that's kind of it. They're kind of neutral to water and air, so if you run into one of those, you can heal yourself pretty well. Starting out strong with the the Trider Salamander. These guys are like all rounders. They're kind of like bruisers. They've got really decent defenses for being a DPS enemy. And yeah, like I said, they have DPS. And they have good evasion too. So, really hard to take down. And plus, they can heal themselves. They're kind of rough. So, I don't want to fight those things too much. Magma Snake is kind of the same deal, somewhat. Yeah, I think Magma Snake never got changed with the balance patches because this game kind of got like 3 massive overhauls. Like maybe not 3, it was like 2 massive overhauls when it came to the balance of stats and enemies. And I think the Magma Snake kind of has its old damage because it still hits really hard. But if you look in the bestiary, it says that they're not supposed to have any damage at all. It's supposed to be like debuffing tanks, but yeah, oh well. But yeah, as you saw, I did pretty good damage with the with just slash on that guy. I mean, it was a critical slash, but a lot of that has to do with my higher attack. Another Trider. Yeah, again, they resist fire and air, and plus they put an air power debuff on you, so not really too sure what to use. Yeah, and they love putting that tail. It's their favorite skill, I tell you. Yeah, and they heal themselves, so. Yeah, it's a bit rough, but if you need these materials, like you kind of have to brave through it, or just wait until later on to get them. The Forger is a tank. Luckily, this is one of the few tanks that don't do any damage. I know some of the other tanks on this floor will hit you pretty good as a rogue. Oh, excuse me. Oh, the old frog in the throat. My old friend. So I don't have an air power debuff yet, so I'm gonna try to use this just to give myself some health. Yeah, they do resist air, but it's not like as much as they resist fire. They take like no damage from fire. Well, I guess that's why they put the air power debuff on you, because they know that If you hit them with air, it'd still do some good damage. Who knows? I would prefer you not use Molten Strike on me, sir. I'm a rogue. Yeah, and that's kind of the challenging thing with rogue. There's a lot of things that can shut down their entire operation. Like a lot of enemies have Stunning Blow. Stunning Blow makes your crits do less damage than your normal non-crit attacks. Things like that. And, Molten Strike reducing your crit chance. There's a lot of skills that will reduce your crit chance. It's rough being a rogue these days. Uh, Azer, the Ignited, it's just a Steam Dwarf with fire. It's really embraced its calling. I forgot if this guy has Steam Dwarf resistances and weaknesses. Given that damage, it might be. I'm not too sure. Yeah, but this guy can hit really hard if he crits. Luckily, he didn't crit with the Fury, so take him out. But yeah, that was a little rough because I couldn't really use half my skills too well in there because it's fire and all that. And again, another reason to have a good mix of elements. I do have two earth skills and I do have two water skills and an earth skill. I had an earth weapon. Okay, no, okay, it's right. I forgot. It defaults to whatever set you were using on that floor. Okay, so got it mixed up. My mistake. But yeah, got two earth skills, which probably isn't the best in this dungeon because all the enemies resist earth, but the majority of my skills are their weakness. So yeah, Satal Watch. This was the tank I was talking about. They've got some pretty good damage, but they're a tank enemy as well. They're kind of like wardens, really, despite them using guardian skills. So they do resist earth. I believe they're neutral to air, but they are definitely weak to water, for sure. Because all salt enemies are weak to water, which is kind of like a sub enemy, a secondary enemy, if you will, to Dungeon 1, Floor 7 and 8. They're kind of just chilling with the Moondrow. It's a whole thing. Don't worry. So I'm not too sure if I want to use Leech Arrow here. Okay, I guess it's not too bad. I'll go ahead and use Piercing Arrow, though, to kill it. Got the lucky crit in there, too. The Venomistress, these are one of the most dangerous enemies in this floor. They will kill you in a couple turns if you get unlucky. And, case in point, yeah, you see, my defense setup, right, my more defensive setup wouldn't really be able to take that damage. Like, the difference wouldn't be that much. But you saw I nearly one-shot her with just a non-crit Scorching Daggers. If I was using my more defensive set, she would have like maybe a third of her health left instead of being nearly dead. That's how that's kind of the difference of 100 attack at this point, I guess. And luckily she didn't evade because she's very evasive too. So I got kind of lucky there. But yeah, if I do crit, I do one-shot her, and that's another thing. Some enemies, especially the Moondrow healer, when I crit a Scorching Daggers against her, she won't die in one hit. She'll like have like a few hit points left on the defensive set, right? But on this offensive set, I do want to shot her. It's just enough to do it. So yeah, probably need to experiment with that, see what works and what doesn't. I mean, you can't rely on your crits. Case in point, I'm not doing anything here. Yeah, like you can't rely on your crits, but if there's an enemy that will die to one hit with a crit, if you add some attack, or if you were to, like, if they barely survive, try adding a little bit more damage, and they will die, of course. And Kyra the Drider, probably used to be one of the scariest enemies, and not just in appearance, but that Drider used to be just a monster back in the day. Like, good lord, she was like two-shotting warriors, mages, one-shotting rogues. It was a it was ridiculous back in the day. The dark ages. Oh, good lord. But yeah, so I went through there pretty easily. Kind of skipped over a few enemies. I'd rather not be fighting another one of those things if I can help it. The Mango Saltals, they're kind of the more DPS version of those two, yeah, of the salt enemies. They do have some really beefy damage, um, but they are pretty weak though. So he's going to die to his own bleed. So I guess I could just rebuff anyway. Yeah, the curse of being a berserker. Well, I wouldn't call it a curse. Berserkers are pretty strong. I totally forgot you had protection. Yeah. God, I miss protection so much. I feel like an old man talking about the good old days. But yeah, warriors used to have protection over on guard. This gave health regen. Health regen is very, very nice to have over a +1 attack buff, which, I mean, it helps the early game, but at the end game, you're going to want 4 turns of regen over one or +1 attack for 7 turns. But I digress. The good old days. Oh, okay. Hit pretty well. All right, don't die here, sir. Okay, might die here. Yikes! Yeah, I mean, again, this is Pixel Quest. Things like this can happen. An enemy could um, just evade you and kill you. Although a part of that was my fault because actually no, I didn't buff on that guy. Usually that happens because I buff on an enemy that I'm not supposed to. Like if I'm trying to, like if I want to put my critical shooting up, I don't want to do that on an enemy that can 3-shot me, like the Venom Mistress. Things like that. Talas the Evoker definitely held a kill for a mage because this guy has there's a lot of magic defense. Uh, yeah, also does a lot of magic damage too. Good lord, please don't kill me, sir or ma'am. I'm not too sure. The dark elves are kind of hard to discern. But yeah, not too bad. Yeah. Now, if I were to go with my more defensive sets here, just to give an example, um, if I actually, that was the healer. The healer is yikes. Um, so yeah, you see, I think a bit less damage on here, right? But when it comes to some of the, well, there you go. I still get hit really hard with certain skills. It's a level there. So the priestess, yeah. Now, if I were to crit with the scorching daggers, it would not kill her in one hit. But on the offensive set, it does, which is kind of strange. But actually, it might one-shot her now because I've leveled up since then. It was one-shotting her when I was level 70, like fresh 70. But I'm not too sure. I have to try it out if I can, one like a scorching daggers crit on there. I'm gonna take a risk and buff because the priestess can do some good damage if she crits. But yeah, you see, not quite. But the offensive set easily could do that. So it's a shame, but it happens. So yeah, okay, this was a pretty decent run here. Well, that was anyway. A little easier than usual, but or I guess I was just getting lucky. It could be the case because last time I was just getting dogpiled. Although part of that could be because of the inherent difficulty spike from going floor to floor. Once you get to a new floor, you'll definitely struggle a little bit. But I did try with the offensive and defensive sets on at like 64, like right when the floor starts to stop kicking your ass so much, and it wasn't that bad. So, or well, the offensive set was doing way better than the defensive set, but I'm not too sure. Maybe things have finally evened out. I don't know. But yeah, again, definitely at this point start experimenting with using like a more offensive, crit heavy, attack and all that set, and then try a more defensive set, and to sort of see which one works better on the floor. I mean, it is a rogue, so a lot of it is up to chance, right? But you'll be surprised because sometimes shedding some of your defense for offense can really help, which I guess is normally like the thing. Offense is best defense, but this game is balanced in such a way to where offense isn't really always the best defense because enemies can evade and outspeed you and things like that. And being able to just not die in one turn really helps. Yeah, the Conjurers are the highest damaging enemy probably in the game, actually, as you could see. Yeah, I think this is one of the enemies that never got rebalanced because for being just a healer, they hit like trucks. I mean, I know it's Bolero of Fire, which is a huge damage skill. Oh, but yikes, man. Calm down. Yeah, and as you can see, I'm not really doing as much damage with my skills here. Getting lucky though. The twins. Yeah, this is a rogue enemy, so I'm probably gonna die here. Unless they decide to buff or something. They did. They used that buff though. I was hoping to get a sneaky scorching dagger heal, but no, I mean to be fair, that Conjurer kind of ruined that entire run there, just nearly one-shotting me. So I guess there's an argument for defense there, because if I was using my offensive set, that would just one-shot me without question. Because I've got 100 less magic defense on the offensive set. So I don't know. So I guess the main takeaway from this, once you get to 4-7, just make two sets and kind of go back and forth, see which one works better on the floor you're on, and then kind of stick to that. And plus, at 4, 7, and 8, enemies will be very similar in terms of their strengths and weaknesses. So, um, try to, depending on what path you are, try to pick a dungeon and stay there for now. For rogues, of course, they got a lot of fire and a lot of air skills, so they probably want to stay with the Moondrow. Although the Moondrow are very capable of outspeeding them, but still. Uh, Warriors have a lot of fire and earth, so I guess they could stick to the Moondrow, but they could also go in um, the Salamander Pits, the Fire Abyss, if they wanted to, because they've got a lot of earth skills to throw around. Mages have a kind of a mix of all elements, so they can kind of go in whichever. Now, another thing to consider is the tanks in each dungeon. Dungeon 1 and 2 both have physical tanks, right? But Dungeon 1 has these priestesses, which are huge, like mega mage tanks. They have a stupid amount of magic defense, and they heal themselves like crazy. So a mage might want to go to the second dungeon because there's no magic tank in the second dungeon. Also, the guard Giga Spider also have huge amounts of magic defense as well, and yeah, mages would have a hard time. Will have a harder time. They're not crazy, but still they have a lot of magic defense. So things like that. So for me, for a rogue, you kind of want to avoid the physical tanks, right? In Dungeon 2, I mean, these guys are physical tanks, but the Triders are also pretty good. They're kind of like berserkers almost. Like they have good defense, but they're mostly offense, right? And yeah, like also this thing, the magma snake, they also have really good defense too. So stay away from Dungeon 2 if you're a rogue. They're kind of dangerous. Also, the Forged Knight. This is also a physical tank, although not really as tanky, nor does as much damage as the other tanks. They can explode, which will likely one-shot you, but that's you can't really control that part. But yeah, things like that. In Dungeon 8, it's kind of the same thing. Or sorry, Floor 8, it's kind of the same thing. Dungeon 1 has two magic tanks. Dungeon 2 has two physical tanks, so pick your poison, but you will want materials from both, of course, to get all these good pieces, right? So, uh, yeah, so I guess that's all. Just wanted to do a quick, well, I don't know if this is going to be quick, a quick little follow up to the first video guide, because again, not all that applicable when you go into the higher difficulty of floors. And like I said, there will be a part 3 likely to deal with Grand Dungeon, because Grand Dungeon is a whole different thing. Like the entire power balance is shifted. Yeah, so and for a lot of builds, they have to change their entire like identity almost to start getting through there. But another video for another time. So that'll be all for now. I shall see you around. Ta ta for now.